Basically, working in Grasshopper and learning the fundamentals pays off. I have come upon this script from many different angles, and I'm just going to play it a little fast and show you how I can have a little fun with it. I'm going to zoom in on this number slider. I'll bring this number slider down to 0, clear it. Just takes a second. There we go. And if I start bringing this up, you see I have some pretty cool generating power to make these rings. In fact, I can make them big. I can hover around here, and I can finger around the over here and generate a very simple script. I mean, extremely simple. But what is happening here? How is Grasshopper building this? And then when I like that geometry, or maybe I didn't, or I want to keep the radius up high or low, it'll slowly generate whatever I want. So if I fly right up here like this, throw it into there, and say that's it, we'll get a form like that. If I bring it down and just bring it up a little bit into here, you're going to get a few subtleties of that cooking and baking. So what exactly is happening? How can I change that? Well, actually, I'm not really changing it. I'm just doing multiple geometries within itself. There's so many, like you may see a small line, but what I did was I baked a bigger radius over it. So a very interesting little process to get some geometry made pretty fast in a three-dimensional way. And like I said, once you get these this kind of procedure down, then all you got to do is change a little bit of the parameters and you're there. Anyhow, this tutorial is going to get to this, but I'm going to start with something a little simpler. So we're just going to go into here and probably clear that site for now. We'll get back to it later. And I'll show you a couple things. We're going to talk about a few more of these inputs. We're going to go into utilities and try and get through to the Scribble tool and into... Yeah, Ella, 1 second. I just wanted to get down to the data recorder all the way, and we'll stop before relay. So just bifocals through data recorder. So one thing you know for sure is that bifocals is something I use all the time. So if I go into here and I enable it, you'll see that it allows me to deal in icons, but puts on these little words at the top, which allow me to, pretty much say anything I want about it. I can't remember if I type something in there. No, it doesn't have any effect on what comes up above it. So that old circle information is only contained within the node, and I just went into Rhino when I did that. Anyway, what happened there? I think I just grabbed the whole thing and slid it up. So bifocals is a nice little tool. I use it quite often. Cherry picker is pretty cool. I want to look at it as why you would use a cherry picker. What is it? First of all, it allows you to pick a single item from a data tree. So if you're getting into data trees, you're going to want to be using maybe the cherry picker. Because what I did was I generated a range and moved a series of circles. Let's get rid of this. And I think I've turned everything off, so maybe I ought to enable everything at least. See what I have, and definitely I'll have to put this on visual. So I made some circles. That was it, and I lofted them. Pretty simple script. But I grafted it. And I grafted it for a reason that I wanted to explode tree, because I'm familiar with the explode tree node, which break things into its little data paths. And I knew if I did that, it would take the circle and give me this data if I grafted it. If I didn't graft it, then I end up with no data because nothing's in there. So I had to kind of reference everything. So I'm going to leave it grafted. Then I add a length to figure out the length of each thing. And what that ends up doing is it adds another path onto it. So I have to explode that tree so that it says the path isn't a circle. It's actually on each one, there's actually the radius of the circle. So, which is 2 pi. And that says I have six of these within, well, I have to go to object 6 because I can pick. See, on the explode tree, I can do the same thing a cherry picker does. I can pick 006, picks that one, says, okay, you got one item there, which happens to be the radius of that circle, which is consistent with every one. So I could grab this one and it would still say the same thing. Now, cherry picker's got to be somewhat related to explode tree, so there it is. I pulled out a grafted object and said, okay, explode the tree, and I get my circle, very similar to what I had up there, and I have the same data coming out of it, except it says, because I've just picked 0, it says it's just on that one branch at that path 0. And if I go in here and I say, okay, well, let's put the graft on, and then put the length on it first, then I can cherry pick that length tied to it, and that puts me over to the radius instead of dealing with the fact that it was a circle, and you still have one item at the end of that. But look at the difference in the paths as I go. Exploding the tree on this length, well, it's not different. It's the same thing as reading the exploded tree on, well, this curve, which was the same. But what happens when I explode the tree here And with the graph, you end up with the same data that's coming out of it, but different things on that data. So try and relate like how you can go in here and you can pick and choose whatever you want. I can pick that one. It's going to be the same data as it goes through it. What happens when I take this data right out and say, okay, I don't want the first, I want the second. And I still have the circle, but it's reading a different circle from that. So that's an interesting thing. I don't know if I ever used the cherry picker. I'm pretty happy with exploding the tree and having access to everything. It seems to be something in an explode tree. You can minus everything, back down to what it was. You don't have to list everything there. You can leave it as a pretty small file. And then you're kind of cherry picking at that, and you see what's happening as I go through and remove those other things. I'm ending up with this data that's being selected in those geometries. So that's a lot of information. It's still pretty confusing to me as I get into data trees. This one's not reading because it's like, okay, you've got tree contains more branches than this component has output parameters. So it's saying warning. You still get items from here, but it's saying, hey, you have more stuff that you can bring in there. And obviously I could, but if I took my z vector in motion and did my range not in 10 steps and did it as 3 steps, then it's not going to have a problem. It actually might have a problem and say, hey, you got more. See, it won't give me anything past 3 because it says there is nothing there. So what happens when I move that down to 2? Obviously, that's not too hard to guess. It's going to remove another circle from that item. Anyway, that's it. That's not really the fun one. That I just wanted to get through that and have a look at it. Let's put it back into a group, slide it over here. Now, what I wanted to get to after that was definitely I'm using the jump tools, which you've already seen me use in other things. So we're jumping back and forth. So that's not too hard. But let's look at the data dam. And I typed in yogurt is tasty. And what I'm going to do is obviously it's read that. But if I go back in for any, and it doesn't have to be a panel, and I say yogurt is not tasty, and exclamation mark, then when I hit enter, and sorry, I want to leave that, it says, okay, you got the old data, and it was on a timer there for a second, and then it switched over. So actually, when you go into here, you can, in 2 seconds, it'll change its data. So you get this way of waiting with what you're doing. And why is that? Maybe I can apply that. So in 10 seconds, if I type in here, Michael Wickerson is great. I mean, the whole world has to wait for that 10 seconds. And as I go, I can force it by hitting play. But if we just wait, I think we'll end up, spending 10 seconds of your life. So maybe we don't need to do that. But it will change. There it is. All right. So enough said. There's something going on there as it kind of records data, has time, which brings us to 2 really cool things. The record data. And this is where I invented this kind of cool script. I'm happy I did it. So let's take off all this stuff and hit preview off. And maybe I'll even take disable because I don't want to deal with it. And then this one, let's hit enable. And I think preview on. And now you're like, well, actually, it's probably best I don't put preview on. Everything will take preview off. And we'll just save this last one. And right now, it's waiting for a pipe. It's like, well, why can't I get any pipe information through here? Pretty simple. If I hit reset, I've got no data going in there. I could put a timer on it, which would say record data every interval of every 2 seconds. So, okay, what's the data coming out? So you'll see what happens when and this is a weird tool. You got to kind of grab it, ungroup, grab the ends of that, stick it in there somehow. Just stick it up and in there. And what's happening is every 2 seconds, it's getting some data. And in grabbing some data, it's saying, okay, put something in there. And you're like, where is it? It definitely should be there as every 2 seconds. Oh, it's registered at 0. So if I move that up and say, okay, we need all that data in here to be, let's say, 1.714. Now it's baking every 2 seconds, 1.714. And it actually is keep doing that. So you can't see any difference. But it's not only building the radius of that circle, it's moving z, and it's parametric to move z in relation to that. It actually builds, I don't know, I could put one into the x coordinate and see what it does to it. That would be fun. But this is where it gets playful for the artist. The length of it can change. It's recording data, and over here I've done a rotation multiplied by a very small, I think it was like a percentage of 5% of that radius. So actually, when I start moving this around, I could hit reset. And actually, a nice way to reset is just bring it back to 0. But what's happening is I bring that data in. It's baking where I'm bringing that data in. And it's changing and updating as I go. So that's a pretty cool way, I think, of sculpting. And I'm sure it's used in Tilt Brush and Oculus and all this VR, AR stuff. And what a wonderful little tool to put an application in. And I came up with it on my own without any instructions, no Firefly plugins, none of that. And That's the excitement. We're at the 10-minute mark. And what I want to do is I want to take my data and I also want it to be the x coordinate. And I'm like, well, what does that do? I don't know. Let's bring it back down to 0 and see what that does. It doesn't seem to do too much different to what it's going on. What if I put it in the data into that, the x and z? Well, that's going to lift it up and do some odd things to that. And these are like algorithms that are put into programs like Tinkercad. And I don't know if I like that one. But I am curious to take that one out. Maybe don't rely on the x coordinate. It's still updating I'm getting something every few minutes, but I'm updating it myself. I do want to know that the length of things, which it doesn't matter at all because that's just the direction of the vector. So that's really unnecessary. Where else could I have plugged it in? Axis, caps, radius, nothing really else. So that's a cool little script that I've written, and that's one of these lucky things you'll see come out of the 1,001 scripts that I'm generating. That's worth exploring, getting past the fundamentals, and that might have an influence on a jewelry designer. I'm hoping ARA uses that in some capacity. It says that was pretty cool. So here I am. I'm just able to do that. Now, what happens if I go in there and I say, all right, you got a few minutes, Mike, have some fun. You can see the data. I'm going to ungroup this. I say, well, I didn't want that shape. I think what would be better primitive for curve would be an ellipse, and I'll put that in. I'll take this data out with Control Shift, and I'll put it into the plane. Actually, I shouldn't have done that. Well, there you go. I accidentally put it into the plane, which means it doesn't know what to do, and it's stuck on this. That's just foolish. I didn't mean to do that. I meant to put that radius into there, and obviously the same radius into the next one, but I can always just go to my expression tool, and the thing's live right now updating, which is kind of strange, but I could do x, times, let's just 1.333, and let's just hit that, and then let's also grab a radius. That geometry is going to be the geometry coming here, which is going to switch everything up, and because it's live, it's like, oh, I gotta think, Mike. Let's take that other information right here as I slide around. I should probably stop the script when I'm playing like this, but it's worth doing. And there's the change in the script. What really happened different as this number went in is I'm able to reset, and I've got a visual on of my ellipse right now. So you can do other transformations and rotations. And this is something I've never done. I mean, I haven't really, gotten into this. But I am generating similar things. The circle's a little more elongated. I could definitely go in and say, give me that expression back, and I want something a little more shenanigan-y. And let's just type in like x times 3, and let's just see what we get. And there we go. You're starting to blow it off in that direction. And it doesn't know anything special, but it does have some power, and you can bring it back in. And one thing I did was you don't have to put it to rational numbers. You could get every iteration of that from 0 to 20. And once that's recorded, you've got basically your tool. Once you bring that in, all you're really adjusting is the thickness of that as you update it, because it's reading the latest stuff in the data. So, it's updating whatever the time was on it. So that's something to come up with. I honestly say I wouldn't make that in Rhino, and maybe it's a strange geometry you want to go into and navigate and explore. But a nice little script right there, and that's a bonus for sticking around and watching this. 13, 40 minutes, 14 minutes. I'm definitely going to put that over to my Happy Blue because I'm content, and the script's running kind of slow, and I probably need a profile on there. Yeah, you can see it's it's almost half a second, or 351 milliseconds to run that script, and that's the pipe. Another thing you could do if you wanted to speed that up, I'm just going to put this in, and like I said, it's kind of foolish to be doing this now. Let's take that radius, and let's take that. And obviously, mesh pipes are much faster, so we put that in there. Ah, not that much faster. Oh, that's because I typed mesh pipe and didn't get one. I should have known. Mesh. Oh, because I said mesh pipe. Mesh pipe. And this is just a little bonus for those that want to stick around. Have some patience with me. Radiance and pipe polyline. There we go. We've got something totally different. That's coming out in a different form. 38 milliseconds to skip out on this, and that would be a way to speed up the script a little bit. I'll just add that to the group. And that's it. So, yeah, and why is it coming out? Because Mesh has the ability to go in some pretty cool colors when you get into coloring meshes. So